Wow. So the Giants, they defeated the Packers in London, and it was a nice little surprise for me, a nice little treat to wake up at 9 in the morning, have my breakfast. I woke up earlier than that, but watch the game at 9:30 in the morning. Just cuddle up on the couch, have a nice fall morning, watching my New York Giants, even though it, I tweeted like midway through the second quarter, like they're done. I mean, there was a certain point where they were down 17-3, and you just think, okay, this is Aaron Rodgers. He's gonna do what he's gonna do, and they just kept hanging in there. They made it closer going into halftime, and then when they came out, as has been the case throughout thus far, the tenure of the excellent Brian Daboll, they make amazing halftime adjustments, and the Giants just completely stormed back methodically, and they were exhausting the defense of the Packers, driving from deep in their own territory all the way to the end zone. That might have been the time where Gary Brightwell got that touchdown, but who was a late round pick last year or 2 years ago by the Giants, a running back who doesn't really, I think, have a ton of talent, but Saquon Barkley was out for that series, and they ended up scoring because Barkley had a stinger. I mean, I can't say enough about Brian Daboll, the leader, Brian Daboll, the big picture thinker, because he's given up play calling to Mike Kafka, who has just shown incredible creativity. Everyone's seen that Daniel Bellinger almost Philly special. He had the option to either throw it to Daniel Jones or rush it in. And he ended up rushing it in for a touchdown. Rookie tight end Daniel Bellinger, who, just a fantasy tip for next year, the fact that he's having such success as a rookie tight end, which is the hardest position in my opinion, besides maybe quarterback or offensive tackle, to actually, offensive line in general, but maybe more than that, because you have both blocking and pass catching assignments. But to adjust that quickly, like he's gonna have a big leap, and he has pass catching ability for sure.
We've seen younger tight ends like in less than ideal situations, like not perform super at a super high level, even ones that were highly drafted, like Cole Kmet for the Bears. Like I think, like for example, I think he's a skilled player and he's a high upside, but even if you're in a bad situation, like you said, combined with the difficulty of kind of ascending from tight end college play to play in the NFL, it's always a good sign to see like an encouraging snaps from a rookie tight end like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that was a really cool touchdown, but that play call from Mike Kafka, that's the creativity that, say, with the personnel that like Zach Taylor has, that he should be engaging in. We'll get into Zach Taylor in a little bit.
And with just like less talent and less name recognition, like I'm just trying to find this tweet I had up here, for in terms of the receiving attack. Jordan Raanan, the ESPN NFL Nation reporter for the Giants, tallied the snaps, the wide receiver snaps, 58 offensive snaps. Marcus Johnson, 45. Richie James, 32. Darius Slayton, 31. David Sills, 25. I mean, this is not a wide receiver room that is like a murderer's row, or like there are no. And I'm not trying to be critical of these guys because they did a great job, but
they were missing Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay, right. Wan'Dale Robinson.
The team this was a team that was pretty this was a team that's been pretty ravaged by injuries to some of their skill position players, and they still were able to hang with the Green Bay Packers, who, by the way, I thought, and I've been saying this throughout the season, I thought truly, in terms of personnel, had one of the better defenses in the league, and they were not able to stop this group of guys.
Yeah, and what is that, honestly, it was because Daniel Jones put the team on his back for a large part of that game. And I know that the stats aren't going to flash out or stick out to people, but if you watched every snap of that game, which I pretty much did, you see that there's very little there to be had, and that Daniel Jones is starting to get a feel for the offense that he's playing in. And 4 out of 5 of the, as I mentioned, starting wide receivers were gone. And Saquon went out for a series, and they still ended up scoring. And DJ was bleeding all over the field. I think we have a good photo that PFT commentator, who I can't stand Barstool Sports, but at the very least, like, I'm amused by. Uh, I still, maybe it's problematic. I still really like Big Cat and PFT commenter, and I like a part of my take a lot. They make me laugh, and PFT got some screen grab of the center there, John Feliciano, who had a bloody butt because Daniel Jones's hand was bleeding so much on the center's ass that when he was taking snaps that there was blood everywhere there. So like pretty funny, but shows the grit that Daniel Jones played with. And you know, I've this season has had me kind of having mixed feelings about a lot of things I felt sure about going into the season, saying like, hey, this year's a lost year. It's a rebuilding year. We're not going to be with the quarterback after this year. Saquon Barkley's not going to get a long-term contract from this front office. But the way that those two guys are playing, now, I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is Patrick Mahomes or, that he's ever going to be a top 10 guy. I don't think that, honestly, if I'm being honest with myself. But I do think that if the Giants are good enough, they're not going to have the ability to draft a quarterback high, and they might franchise tag Daniel Jones and have him for next year, given how it seems like Brian Daboll has been praising him. I saw the reporter for The Athletic for the Giants, Dan Duggan, was saying that unprompted, Daboll was bringing up how awesome Daniel Jones was and how the narratives against him were unfair. In that press conference, it seems like the staff is growing to love him, and he has these physical tools in terms of size. He's 6'5", he's big as hell. He's got legs, as we know, and he is throwing with a little bit more velocity than I saw last year. So, look, if the Giants are a fun team at the very least, and I don't understand why the Packers lost interest in the run game. It seems to be a theme with them. The Giants are missing Leonard Williams, and they still did not run the ball that much in the second half. It's like they kind of get enamored with Rodgers being surgical with some of these passes, but it's not. It was not like a good coaching decision.
Which is wild because we were talking about this a few weeks ago with the Packers Bears game. The way that they course corrected from I'm trying to remember who they played before that they had a really they struggled heavily before they played the Bears. And, I wouldn't say the Bears, in terms of talent, in terms of personality, I wouldn't say the Bears and the Giants have, like, there aren't a whole lot of, really formidable guys on both. It's just, two kind of talent scarce teams.
Yes.
Who,
but one of them has Aaron Rodgers,
exactly.
And so they're like constantly in the playoff conversation.
And one of them gashed, and the combination of AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones, like they were gashing the Bears. I mean, they were pounding it on the ground. They were using both guys in pony formation, and for some reason, they didn't feel like incumbent upon themselves for this particular game, if through the air wasn't working for them with Rodgers, to try that type of use that strategy again. It just seems kind of like leaving some of your scheme or some of your personnel wanting or kind of on the table when you have two guys like that you can utilize in different ways and not even trying to do it.
It was weird, yeah. And what also became evident later in the second half of the game was that, Rodgers only trusts two guys on that offense, and that's Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb. And Randall Cobb, I know they're best friends forever. Randall Cobb is not a good receiver at this point in his NFL career. And I thought the game might be over when Adoree Jackson went out. And he's been, besides Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence, who's had a very good year, the best player on the Giants defense.
Yeah.
And he's, a really fast corner and he can keep up with these guys. He went out and the Giants were like, all right, like practice squad guys coming on up. And Rodgers was unable to exploit that because they essentially took the two guys that he trusts away. And that's on Wink Martindale and the scheme.
And frankly, this is the issue that the Packers were inevitably going to run into if Rodgers was not feeling comfortable enough if Rodgers wasn't feeling comfortable enough to trust Romeo Doubs and trust Christian Watson, or if one of those guys were to get hurt. I mean, Christian Watson, I think, has been a little banged up the last few weeks. And this is what happens when you go into the season after Devontae Adams leaves and you have vet receivers in Lazard and Cobb who are not field stretchers, who aren't burners, who aren't, young guys with a high ceiling, and then two rookies who, unfortunately, given the makeup of this team, a lot is expected of them. And there's
Yeah.
lots going to be expected of them when Aaron Rodgers is the guy who's leading the offense. And if he's really only feeling comfortable trusting two guys, and those two guys being the vets with kind of a high floor and a low ceiling,
Right.
that's not going to lead to a lot of offensive explosiveness.